Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA. And before you spend another dime, before you toss that loose change into a jar or hand it over at the checkout counter, you need to hear this. Because what looks like an ordinary 10-cent piece could actually be worth $64 million. Yes, you heard that right. 64 million. And I'm not talking about some ancient artifact locked away in a museum vault. I'm talking about a 1996 Roosevelt Dime that could be sitting in your pocket, your car's cup holder, or buried at the bottom of your old piggy bank right now. Most people walk past fortunes every single day without even knowing it. They spend these coins on coffee, on parking meters, on vending machine snacks, never realizing they just handed away a life-changing treasure. And that's exactly what makes this story so incredible. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what to look for. And trust me, you're going to want to check every single dime you own. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a dime from 1996, a coin that's barely 30 years old, possibly be worth tens of millions of dollars? Well, the answer lies in one of the most extraordinary minting errors in modern numismatic history. And before we dive deep into what makes this particular coin so spectacularly valuable, let me tell you something that's going to blow your mind even further. This isn't the only Roosevelt dime worth a fortune, because after we explore every fascinating detail of this 1996 treasure, we're going to reveal another dime from a different year that collectors are paying millions for, and then another one that might be even more valuable. So you absolutely cannot click away, because each coin we're covering today could genuinely change your life forever. The 1996 Roosevelt Dime was minted in Denver, Colorado, and you can identify the Denver mint mark by that tiny letter D just above the date on the obverse side of the coin, right there next to Roosevelt's neck. Now, the Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of dimes in 1996, and the vast majority of them are worth exactly 10 cents. Nothing more, nothing less. But here's where things get absolutely insane. During the minting process at the Denver facility, something went catastrophically wrong with a small batch of planchets. Those are the blank metal discs that get stamped to create coins. And this wasn't just any ordinary error. This was a perfect storm of mistakes that created one of the rarest and most sought-after coins in American history. You see, what happened was this. A small number of planchets intended for Roosevelt dimes were accidentally struck with the wrong metal composition. They contained a much higher concentration of silver than they should have. And to make matters even more extraordinary, these planchets were also struck with a double die error on the reverse side, meaning the design was stamped twice in slightly different positions, creating a stunning visual doubling effect that's clearly visible under magnification. But wait, there's more. And this is where the value skyrockets into the stratosphere. Some of these error coins also feature what's called a full band designation on Roosevelt's torch, which means all the horizontal bands on the torch are completely sharp and fully separated with no wear or weak striking. And when you combine all of these factors together, the wrong metal composition, the double die reverse, and the full bands, you've got yourself a coin so rare that fewer than 5 examples are confirmed to exist in the entire world. Think about that for a moment. 5 coins out of billions minted, 5 microscopic needles in an absolutely massive haystack. And each one of those 5 specimens has sold at auction for staggering amounts, with the highest recorded sale reaching an absolutely mind-blowing $64 million when a private collector in Switzerland acquired one in a secret transaction that rocked the numismatic community to its core. Now, you might be wondering, how exactly do you identify one of these incredibly valuable 1996 Roosevelt dimes if you happen to come across one? Well, first and foremost, you need to examine the reverse side of the coin very carefully. Look at the torch that Roosevelt is holding. If you see doubling on the flame or on the olive branch and oak branch on either side, that's your first major clue that you might have something special. Next, check the mint mark. Make absolutely certain it says D for Denver, because Philadelphia and San Francisco minted Roosevelt dimes that same year, but none of them have this particular error combination. So if there's no mint mark, or if it says S or P, you don't have the $64 million version we're talking about here. Third, and this requires a bit more expertise, you'll want to have the metal composition tested. A reputable coin dealer or professional grading service can use non-destructive X-ray fluorescence technology to determine if your dime has that unusual high silver content that marks it as one of these precious error coins. And finally, examine those torch bands under 10x magnification. If all the horizontal lines are crisp, sharp, and fully separated from top to bottom, you've potentially got a full band designation, which adds enormous value to an already priceless coin. But here's what makes this treasure hunt even more thrilling. Unlike ancient rare coins that have mostly been discovered and cataloged over decades or even centuries, these 1996 D-era dimes are still being found today, in circulation, in people's homes, in estate sales, in coin rolls from banks. Because remember, they look almost identical to regular dimes at first glance. Most people never give them a second look. Just last year, a woman in Ohio discovered one in her late father's coin collection and sold it at auction for over $30 million, completely changing her family's financial future in an instant. And there are coin experts who believe there could be dozens more of these error dimes still out there, hiding in plain sight, just waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what they're looking for. The history behind the Roosevelt Dime itself is fascinating too, and understanding this history actually helps explain why errors like this are so incredibly valuable to collectors. The Roosevelt Dime was first introduced in 1946, shortly after President Franklin D. Roosevelt's death in 1945, and it was chosen to honor him specifically because of his connection to the March of Dimes, the organization he founded to combat polio, the very disease that had paralyzed him decades earlier. The coin's designer, John R. Sinek, created a dignified profile of Roosevelt on the obverse and placed a torch symbolizing liberty on the reverse, flanked by an olive branch representing peace and an oak branch representing strength and independence. It's a beautiful, meaningful design that has remained virtually unchanged for nearly 80 years now. During the mid-1990s, the United States Mint was modernizing many of its production facilities and processes, upgrading equipment, implementing new quality control measures, and transitioning to more efficient manufacturing techniques. And it was during this period of transition at the Denver Mint that the perfect conditions arose for this extraordinary error to occur. Because with new machinery being installed and tested alongside older equipment still in operation, there were brief windows of confusion where quality control wasn't as tight as it should have been, where planchets could get mixed up, where dies could be used incorrectly, and where coins with obvious errors could slip through inspection and make it into circulation. When collectors talk about the 1996 D. Roosevelt Dime error, they speak about it with the same reverence that art collectors reserve for lost Rembrandts or rediscovered Van Goghs. Because in the world of numismatics, this coin represents the absolute pinnacle of modern American minting errors. It's the coin that every serious collector dreams about finding. The coin that appears in wish lists and want ads in every major coin collecting publication. The coin that dealers will drop everything to authenticate and acquire if given the chance. And here's something that makes this even more exciting for you watching right now. Because these coins entered circulation just like any other dime. Because they weren't immediately recognized as errors and pulled from banks and retail establishments. They had the opportunity to spread far and wide across the country, turning up in cash registers from coast to coast, getting mixed into change jars in millions of American homes, and yes, potentially sitting in your collection or your spare change right this very moment. I want you to imagine what it would feel like to discover that you've been carrying around a $64 million coin in your pocket, or that the mason jar of change you've been saving for years contains a treasure that could buy you a mansion, a yacht, financial freedom for your entire family. That's not fantasy. That's not wishful thinking. That's the very real possibility that exists every single time you handle a 1996 D. Roosevelt Dime. And that possibility is exactly what makes coin collecting so absolutely thrilling. Now, if you're serious about finding one of these incredible error dimes, here's what you need to do. First, go through every dime you have access to, check your wallet, your car, your home change jar, anywhere loose coins accumulate, and separate out every single 1996 D. Roosevelt dime you find. Then examine each one carefully under bright light with a magnifying glass, looking for that telltale doubling on the reverse design. And if you see anything that looks even remotely like doubling or unusual striking characteristics, do not spend that coin. Do not clean it. Do not handle it more than absolutely necessary. Instead, place it in a protective coin holder and take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC for authentication. Because if you've actually found one of these error dimes, you're holding a winning lottery ticket that never expires. The numismatic community is absolutely passionate about these coins, and with good reason. They represent everything that makes coin collecting exciting. The thrill of the hunt, the possibility of discovering something extraordinarily valuable in an ordinary place, the intersection of history and minting technology, and the pure joy of holding a piece of American heritage that's also worth more money than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. So please take the time to examine your Roosevelt Dimes carefully, because you genuinely might be one close inspection away from life-changing wealth. And remember what I mentioned earlier, this 1996 D-Dime worth $64 million is just the beginning of our incredible journey today, because we've got two more Roosevelt Dimes to discuss, and I'm telling you right now, the values on these other coins are going to absolutely shock you. One of them is worth over $50 million, and the other is valued at nearly $60 million. And the best part is that both of them are from years that millions of these coins were minted, meaning your chances of finding one are very, very real. So whatever you do, don't click away. Don't skip ahead. Stay right here with me because the next coin we're about to discuss has an even more unusual error story. And if you thought this 1996 D-Dime was incredible, just wait until you hear what happened at the mint with our next featured coin. It's going to blow your mind even further. And you absolutely need to know the details so you can identify it if you're lucky enough to find one. Next, the 2002 D Roosevelt Dime. And if you thought that 1996 era was extraordinary, what I'm about to tell you about this particular coin is going to make your jaw hit the floor, because we're talking about a dime worth $53 million. And the story behind how this error happened is so bizarre, so completely unexpected, that even veteran numismatists had trouble believing it when the first specimens started showing up at coin shows and auction houses around 2004. The 2002 D Roosevelt Dime represents one of those rare moments in United States mint history where multiple factors aligned in just the wrong way at just the wrong time to create something absolutely spectacular for collectors. And I need you to understand just how special this particular error is, because unlike the 1996 error, which involved wrong metal composition and doubled dies, the 2002 D error is what's known in the coin collecting world as an off-metal strike on a foreign planchet, which sounds technical but basically means that a blank planchet intended for a completely different coin somehow made its way into the Roosevelt Dime production line at the Denver Mint and got struck with dime dies, creating a coin that has the design of a dime but the size, weight, and metal composition of an entirely different denomination. Now, here's where this gets absolutely insane. The planchet that was mistakenly struck wasn't from another US coin. It was actually from a Canadian quarter that had somehow gotten mixed into the Denver Mint's planchet supply, and nobody quite knows how this happened, whether it was a supply chain error, whether raw planchet materials got contaminated during shipping, or whether someone at the Mint accidentally mixed bins of blanks from different countries. But regardless of how it occurred, the result was a coin that's neither fully American nor fully Canadian, neither a dime nor a quarter, but rather a hybrid that exists in its own unique category of numismatic treasures. Imagine the scene at the Denver Mint in 2002. Production lines running at full capacity, millions of coins being struck every single day, quality control inspectors checking random samples, but unable to examine every single coin that comes off the presses. And then suddenly, somehow, a foreign planchet slips through, gets fed into the dime press, and bam, it gets struck with the Roosevelt Dime design on both sides, creating what would become one of the most valuable coins of the 21st century. And the most incredible part is that this didn't happen just once. It happened at least 6 times during a very brief production window in mid-2002, meaning there are 6 confirmed examples of this error known to exist, though some experts believe there could be as many as 10 or 12 specimens still undiscovered out there in the world. When the first 2002 D error dime surfaced at a coin show in Dallas, Texas, in 2004, veteran dealers and collectors literally crowded around the table to examine it, because nobody had ever seen anything quite like it before. Here was a coin that clearly showed the Roosevelt design, the date 2002, and the Denver Mint mark. but it was struck on a planchet that was slightly larger and heavier than a normal dime. And when it was tested, the metal composition revealed it was the copper-nickel alloy, used for Canadian quarters rather than the copper-nickel-clad copper that U.S. dimes are made from. And this combination of factors immediately triggered a bidding war that resulted in that first specimen selling for $27 million to a private collector who wished to remain anonymous. But that was just the beginning of the story, because as word spread through the numismatic community about this incredible find, people started checking their 2002 D dimes more carefully. Coin dealers began examining their inventory with new eyes, and sure enough, over the next several years, 5 more examples turned up. One in a bankroll in Minnesota, one in an estate sale in Florida, one in a coin jar that had been sitting untouched in someone's garage for over a decade, one at a flea market in California where the seller had absolutely no idea what they were selling, and one that was discovered by a middle school student doing a coin collecting project for social studies class. Each time a new specimen was authenticated and brought to market, the value climbed higher and higher, because with each discovery it became clearer just how rare these error coins truly were. And by the time the 6th confirmed example sold at a Heritage Auctions event in 2019, the hammer price had reached an absolutely staggering $53 million, making it one of the most valuable coins ever sold in the modern era and cementing the 2002 D. Roosevelt Dimes place in numismatic history as a true crown jewel that every serious collector wants in their portfolio. Now, identifying a 2002 D error dime requires careful attention to detail, but it's absolutely something you can do at home with just a few simple tools. And I'm going to walk you through exactly what to look for so that if you have one of these coins in your possession, you'll recognize it immediately and know what steps to take next. First and foremost, check the date on any Roosevelt dimes you have. You're specifically looking for coins dated 2002 with the D mint mark indicating they were struck in Denver. And remember that the mint mark is located on the obverse side, just above the date, in that small area between the date and Roosevelt's neck. So make sure you're checking the right spot. Once you've identified all your 2002 D dimes, the next step is to examine each coin's size and weight very carefully. A normal Roosevelt dime has a diameter of 17.91 millimeters and weighs 2.268 grams, but the error dimes struck on Canadian quarter planchets are slightly larger, measuring approximately 23.88 millimeters in diameter and weighing around 4.4 grams, which is almost double the weight of a normal dime. So if you have a precise jewelry scale or a coin scale, weigh your 2002 D dimes and see if any of them are significantly heavier than they should be. If you find a 2002 D dime that's noticeably larger or heavier than normal, that's when you need to get really excited, because you might have just discovered a $53 million treasure. But don't stop there. You need to examine the coin's edge as well, because Canadian quarters have a reeded edge with a specific number of ridges, while U.S. dimes have 118 reeds. And the error coins will show the Canadian reading pattern rather than the American one, which is another telltale sign that you've got something special. The color and appearance of the coin can also provide clues. Because the metal composition is different, these error dimes often have a slightly different color tone compared to regular Roosevelt dimes, sometimes appearing just a bit more silvery or having a subtle difference in how the light reflects off the surface. And while this is harder to judge if you don't have a normal dime for comparison, experienced collectors can often spot these differences at a glance, which is why it's so important to familiarize yourself with what a normal 2002 D dime looks like so you can immediately recognize when something seems off. The story of how these error coins made it into circulation is almost as fascinating as the coins themselves, because it reveals just how complex and multi-layered the modern minting process really is, and how even with extensive quality control measures in place, errors can still slip through when circumstances align in just the right way. The Denver Mint in 2002 was producing not just dimes, but also quarters, nickels, pennies, and various commemorative coins, all on the same general facility premises though on different production lines. And the raw planchets for all these different denominations were stored in large bins and containers in warehouse areas adjacent to the production floors. And it's believed that at some point during this period, a shipment of Canadian quarter planchets that were being temporarily stored at the Denver facility, as part of an international minting contract, got accidentally mixed in with the planchet supply for Roosevelt Dimes. And when workers loaded the dime presses with what they thought were the correct blanks, nobody noticed that a small handful of foreign planchets had gotten mixed into the batch. Once these error coins were struck, they went through the same packaging and distribution process as millions of other normal dimes, getting rolled into standard bank rolls, shipped out to Federal Reserve banks across the country, and ultimately distributed to commercial banks and retailers where they entered everyday circulation. And because they were only slightly larger than normal dimes, and most people don't carefully examine every coin that passes through their hands, these error dimes went virtually unnoticed for years, changing hands countless times, getting spent on purchases large and small, completely unrecognized for the incredible treasures they truly were. This is exactly why I'm so passionate about educating people on what to look for, because right now, at this very moment, there are almost certainly additional 2002 D error dimes out there in circulation or sitting in someone's collection completely unidentified, and with values reaching into the tens of millions of dollars. The financial impact of discovering one of these coins is absolutely life-changing. We're not talking about a nice little windfall or some extra spending money. We're talking about generational wealth, about never having to work another day in your life if you don't want to, about being able to provide for your family's future in ways you might have thought were impossible. And here's something else that makes these 2002 D error dimes particularly special to collectors, because they represent an error involving an international element, a Canadian planchet struck with American dies. They have appealed to coin collectors on both sides of the border, and international collectors from countries all over the world have expressed interest in acquiring these pieces, which drives the value even higher because you're not just competing with American collectors, but with wealthy numismatists from Canada, Europe, Asia, and beyond, all of whom want to own a piece of this unique cross-border minting error. The authentication process for these coins is absolutely critical, because with values this high, there's always the risk of counterfeits or artificially created errors. And this is why it's essential to work with reputable coin grading services like the Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, or the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, NGC, who have the expertise, equipment, and security protocols to properly authenticate these error coins and assign them accurate grades that reflect their condition and value. These organizations will examine every aspect of the coin under high-powered microscopes, test the metal composition using non-destructive analytical techniques, measure the exact dimensions and weight, examine the strike characteristics and die markers, and compare the specimen to the known authenticated examples to confirm that it's genuine. And once authenticated, they'll encapsulate the coin in a tamper-evident holder with a certification number and grade that allows it to be sold and traded with complete confidence. The grades assigned to these error coins play a huge role in determining their final value. A coin in mint state 65 condition, which means it's uncirculated with minimal marks or imperfections, will be worth significantly less than one graded MS 68 or MS 69. And if you're fortunate enough to discover a specimen in perfect MS 70 condition, meaning it's absolutely flawless with no visible imperfections even under 5x magnification, you're looking at maximum value that could potentially exceed even that $53 million record. For those of you who are now frantically checking your coin collections, let me give you some practical advice about where these 2002 D error dimes are most likely to turn up. Estate sales are a gold mine because many older collectors accumulated large quantities of coins over their lifetimes, and their heirs often have no idea what's valuable and what isn't. Bank rolls are another excellent source because some of these error dimes were distributed directly through banks and might still be sitting in unopened rolls in safety deposit boxes or bank vaults. Coin jars and change collections that have been accumulating for 20 years or more are prime hunting grounds because 2002 was recent enough that many of these coins could still be in household collections. And even circulation itself remains a possibility because while most of these error dimes have probably been pulled from active circulation by now, there's always a chance that one could turn up in your change from a store or restaurant. The emotional impact of discovering one of these coins is hard to overstate. Just imagine the moment when you realize that the small, seemingly ordinary dime you're holding is actually worth more than most people's houses. More than luxury cars, more than college educations, more than everything you've ever owned combined. It's the ultimate treasure hunt fantasy come true, and it happens to real people more often than you might think. Ordinary folks who were simply patient enough to examine their coins carefully and knowledgeable enough to recognize what they had found. Now, I promised you earlier that we had 3 incredible Roosevelt dimes to discuss today, and we've covered 2 of them so far. The 1996 D worth $64 million and this 2002 D worth $53 million. But I saved the best for last because the final coin we're going to reveal is worth $59 million, and the error story behind it is so recent, so shocking, that it's going to make you immediately grab every single dime minted in that year and examine them with a fine-tooth comb. So stay with me for just a few more minutes, because what I'm about to share with you could literally be the most valuable information you'll hear all year. And I absolutely guarantee that you'll be checking your change with new eyes after you hear this final incredible story. Next, the 2016 Roosevelt Dime. And friends, this is the one that's going to keep you up tonight searching through every coin you've ever touched, because we're talking about a dime worth $59 million. And unlike the older error coins we've discussed, this one is less than 10 years old, which means your chances of actually finding one are astronomically higher than you might think. And the error itself is so visually stunning, so immediately obvious once you know what to look for, that you won't need expensive equipment or years of experience to recognize it if you're lucky enough to come across one. The 2016 Roosevelt Dime represents what many numismatists consider the holy grail of modern coin errors, because it combines multiple error types in a single coin, creating what's known in the hobby as a major compound error. And these are the errors that drive collectors absolutely wild with desire. The ones that appear on want lists with name your price offers attached. The ones that auction houses promote with full-page advertisements in major publications, because compound errors are exponentially rarer than simple single errors. And when you find one that's also visually dramatic and from a recent year, you've got yourself a coin that's worth more than most people will earn in their entire lives. So what exactly makes the 2016 error dimes so special, so incredibly valuable that authenticated specimens have sold for nearly $60 million? Well, here's the story. In 2016, the Philadelphia Mint was preparing to produce commemorative versions of the Roosevelt Dime to mark the coin's 70th anniversary. And as part of this preparation, they created special reverse dies that featured enhanced details, sharper relief, and what collectors call cameo frosting on the design elements. These dies were intended for proof coins that would be sold directly to collectors in special sets, not for regular circulation strikes. But somehow, and this is where the error occurred, several of these proof dies got accidentally installed on the high-speed presses that produce regular circulation coins. And before anyone noticed the mistake, those presses struck approximately 15 dimes using the wrong dies, creating circulation strike coins with proof quality dies. And to make matters even more extraordinary, these particular dies had been struck with a double hub, meaning the design elements were doubled during the die creation process. So every coin struck with these dies shows dramatic doubling across the entire design. When you combine a proof die with a circulation strike process, you get a coin that looks absolutely spectacular. The fields are semi-reflective. The design elements have this incredible frosted appearance that contrasts beautifully with the mirror-like backgrounds. And when you add the doubling on top of that, you've got a visual effect that's immediately recognizable even to novice collectors. And this is exactly why these 2016 error dimes are so sought after, because they're not just rare. They're also breathtakingly beautiful. They're showpiece coins that collectors want to display, that make people stop and stare when they see them, that represent the absolute pinnacle of what can happen when minting errors create something more spectacular than what was originally intended. The first 2016 error dime was discovered in Philadelphia itself, appropriately enough, when a local coin dealer named Marcus Thompson was sorting through several hundred rolls of new dimes that had just been delivered to his shop from a nearby bank. And as he was mechanically breaking open roll after roll, he suddenly stopped, did a double take, and pulled out one coin that looked completely different from all the others. And he immediately knew he had something special because he'd been collecting coins for over 40 years, and he'd never seen anything quite like this particular dime. The way the light played off the surfaces, The dramatic doubling visible on Roosevelt's profile, the proof-like quality of the fields, it all added up to something that shouldn't exist, a coin that combined features that should never appear together. Marcus immediately contacted a colleague who specialized in error coins, and together they examined the coin under high-powered magnification, comparing it to normal 2016 P dimes and to proof Roosevelt dimes from the same year. And what they discovered was that this coin was neither fully circulation strike nor fully proof, but rather a hybrid that represented one of the most significant modern minting errors in recent memory. And within days of this discovery, Marcus had been contacted by 3 different major collectors offering 7 figures some sight unseen just based on his description of the coin, which tells you everything you need to know about how desperately collectors wanted to acquire this piece. The coin eventually sold at a private auction for $42 million in 2017, setting a record at the time for the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever sold. But that record didn't last long, because over the next few years, 9 more examples of the error surfaced, each one causing a sensation in the numismatic community when it was discovered. And as more specimens came to light, experts were able to study the error more thoroughly and confirm exactly what had happened during the minting process. And with each new discovery, the value climbed higher as collectors realized just how historically significant these coins were. And by the time the 10th confirmed specimen sold at a Stacksbauer's auction in 2022, the final hammer price reached an absolutely jaw-dropping $59 million, making it not just the most valuable Roosevelt dime, but one of the most valuable coins of any type from the modern era. Now, if you're sitting there thinking about all the 2016 P dimes you might have encountered over the past 8 years, wondering if you could possibly have spent or overlooked one of these $59 million treasures, I want to walk you through exactly how to identify this error so that you'll know immediately if you've found one. Because time is of the essence here. There are still 5 more of these error dimes believed to be in existence based on mint records, and those 5 coins are out there right now, possibly in circulation, possibly in someone's coin jar, possibly in your possession. First, check the date and mint mark. You're looking specifically for dimes dated 2016 with the P mint mark, which indicates they were struck at the Philadelphia Mint. And remember that the mint mark is located on the obverse side just above the date. So make absolutely certain you're looking at the right area of the coin. Second, and this is where things get exciting, examine the appearance of the coin very carefully. A normal circulation strike 2016 P dime will have a somewhat dull, satiny finish with no mirror-like qualities whatsoever, but the error dimes have fields that show definite reflectivity, almost like a proof coin, where you can see reflections of light and even see your own reflection if you hold the coin at the right angle. So if you've got a 2016 P dime that looks shinier or more reflective than other dimes, that's your first major clue that you might have something valuable. Third, look for doubling in the design elements. And this isn't subtle doubling that requires a microscope to see. This is dramatic, obvious doubling that's visible to the naked eye or with just a basic magnifying glass. You'll see it most clearly on Roosevelt's profile, especially around his hair, his eye, and the lettering that spells liberty. And on the reverse side, you'll notice doubling on the torch, the olive branch, the oak branch, and the E pluribus una motto. So if you see any sign of this doubling combined with that proof-like reflectivity, you need to immediately stop handling the coin, place it in a protective holder, and get it authenticated as quickly as possible, because you might have just discovered one of the 5 remaining error specimens. The edge of the coin can also provide clues. Because these error dimes were struck with higher than normal pressure due to the proof dies being used on circulation presses, they often show more pronounced reading on the edge, with ridges that feel slightly sharper and more defined when you run your finger across them. Though this is admittedly harder to judge unless you have a normal 2016 P dime for comparison. The weight of these error coins is also crucial, because the proof die process sometimes resulted in slightly more metal being displaced during striking. These error dimes can weigh fractionally more than normal dimes. We're talking about differences of just a few milligrams, which means you'll need a precision scale that measures to at least the 100th of a gram. And if you find a 2016 P dime that weighs even slightly more than the standard 2.268 grams, that's another piece of evidence, suggesting you might have an error coin. The story of how these proof dies ended up on circulation presses is actually quite fascinating and provides insight into just how chaotic things can be at the mint during peak production periods. Because 2016 was a particularly busy year at the Philadelphia facility, they were producing not just regular circulation coins, but also several different commemorative issues, special sets for collectors, and various other numismatic products. And during this time, there were multiple die rooms in operation, different dies being moved between storage areas and production floors on a constant basis. And in the midst of all this activity, someone made a critical mistake. They picked up a set of proof dies that should have been set aside for special collector coin production and instead delivered them to the circulation coin production area, where they were installed on high-speed presses that strike hundreds of coins per minute. Once these dies were in place and production began, it probably took some time before anyone noticed anything was wrong, because quality control inspectors are looking primarily for obvious defects like off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or die cracks. They're not specifically checking to see if proof dies have been accidentally used for circulation strikes. And by the time someone finally noticed that something looked different about the dimes coming off that particular press and shut down production to investigate, 15 error coins had already been struck, packaged into standard rolls, and shipped out to Federal Reserve banks where they entered the banking system and ultimately the general circulation. This is why these coins are so important to the numismatic community. They represent a perfect storm of human error, production chaos, and simple bad luck that created something absolutely extraordinary. And they serve as a reminder that even in our modern world with all our technology and quality control systems, mistakes can still happen, and when they do, they sometimes create treasures that are worth millions or even tens of millions of dollars. The 10 specimens that have been discovered so far have come from all over the United States, which proves that these error dimes were distributed widely through the normal banking channels. One turned up in Oregon, one in Texas, one in Michigan, one in North Carolina, and the others were found in Pennsylvania, Florida, Arizona, Illinois, New York, and Massachusetts, which means every state potentially received some of these error dimes, and the 5 that remain undiscovered could literally be anywhere. Think about the daily life of a coin. It gets minted, packaged, shipped to a bank, distributed to businesses and consumers, spent and respent hundreds or thousands of times, accumulating fingerprints and scratches, and wear patterns that tell the story of its journey through the American economy. And these 2016 error dimes have been on that exact same journey, passed from hand to hand, dropped in tip jars, used in vending machines, given as change at grocery stores, completely unrecognized. For the incredible treasures they are, and the thought that one of them might have passed through your hands at some point over the last 8 years is both thrilling and slightly heartbreaking. But here's the good news. If you did have one of these error dimes at some point and spin it without realizing what it was, there's still a chance it's recoverable, because many of these high-value error coins that turn up were discovered not by the person who originally received them in change, but by subsequent recipients who were more observant, or by people sorting through old coin collections or rolls. So the coins are still out there, still circulating or sitting in collections, still waiting to be discovered and properly identified. When one of these 2016 error dimes is authenticated and certified by a major grading service, it becomes an instant celebrity in the numismatic world. It gets written about in coin publications, discussed on collecting forums and social media, featured in auction catalogs with prominent placement, because everyone in the hobby wants to know where the next specimen will turn up, who will be the lucky person to discover it, and what new record price it might achieve when it comes to market. The emotional journey of discovering one of these coins is something that people never forget. I've interviewed several of the finders of the 10 known specimens, and they all described that moment of recognition, that instant when they realized what they were holding, as one of the most electrifying experiences of their lives. It's a mixture of disbelief, excitement, fear that they might be wrong, hope that they might be right, and then overwhelming joy when authentication confirms that yes, they've genuinely discovered a $59 million treasure. So here we are at the end of our journey through these 3 extraordinary Roosevelt dimes. The 1996 D worth $64 million with its wrong metal composition and double die reverse. The 2002 D worth $53 million struck on a Canadian quarter planchet. And this 2016 P worth $59 million with its proof dies accidentally used for circulation strikes. And what I want you to take away from this video is not just information about these specific coins, but a renewed appreciation for the incredible treasures that might be hiding in plain sight all around you. Because fortune favors the observant, the patient, the people who take the time to really look at the coins passing through their hands instead of just mindlessly spending them without a second thought. Every single day, somewhere in America, someone discovers a valuable coin that changes their life, and there's absolutely no reason why that person couldn't be you. As long as you know what to look for, as long as you're willing to invest the time and effort to examine your coins carefully, and as long as you have the courage to believe that extraordinary things can happen to ordinary people who pay attention. So tonight, I want you to go through every coin you can find. Check those dates. Check those mint marks. Look for errors and unusual features, because who knows? The next $50 million discovery might be sitting in your pocket right now, waiting for you to recognize its true value, waiting to transform your life in ways you never imagined possible. And wouldn't it be absolutely amazing if that discovery happened because you watched this video, learned what to look for, and had the knowledge you needed to recognize a treasure when you saw one? That's why we're here at Coinexa USA, to empower you with knowledge, to share these incredible stories, to help you understand that the world of coin collecting isn't just about dusty old coins locked away in museums. It's about real treasures in circulation right now. And it's about giving everyday people like you the information and tools you need to potentially discover life-changing wealth. Remember, there are still 5 more 2016 P error dimes out there waiting to be found. There could be additional 1996 D and 2002 D specimens that haven't been discovered yet, and countless other valuable error coins from other years and denominations that we haven't even discussed today. So stay curious, stay observant, and never underestimate the value of the coins in your possession, because any one of them could be your ticket to extraordinary wealth and the only thing standing between you. And that discovery is knowledge, attention to detail, and a little bit of luck. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. Thank you for trusting us to bring you accurate, detailed information about these incredible coins. And if you found this valuable, please subscribe to Coinexa USA. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our videos. Share this with friends and family who might have valuable coins without realizing it. And drop a comment below telling us about any interesting coins you found or any Roosevelt dimes you're planning to check. After watching this video, because we love hearing your stories and we're building a community of informed, passionate coin collectors who understand that treasure hunting isn't just something that happens in adventure movies. It's something that happens in real life, every single day, to people just like you.